This is Mike Møller Nielsen from Java Code Geeks, and I'm going to teach you how to write clean, efficient code using the Tkinter library. If you want to create a thick client using Python, then maybe Tkinter is the right choice for you. Now, complementary to this video, we have a related article and links in the description below. Please take the time to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when we have new stuff coming up. Now, without any further ado, let's get started. So what is Tkinter? It is as it says right here, a Python interface to something called TCL/TK. And that is again a GUI toolkit that actually works on most operating systems like macOS, Windows, and also most Linux distributions like Unix-based systems. Most of the features that you would expect from a GUI framework, those are actually available, and there are three different ways to lay out all of these widgets, as they are called, on the screen. And those three are place, pack, and to use the grid layout manager. So let me just show you. I'll show you first. I'll show you a large program that I made right here. With this is made with the grid layout manager, and I'll press Control Shift F10 right here, and then we can actually see that I have this photo application right here where I can go through my photos, all of the photos that I've placed in a certain folder named images. Those are just those are being seen right here, and I can press Next. And of course, I can also press Previous. Quite simple, but also quite a nice image, nice application where we have three huge areas. We have a header, we have an image area, and then we have a bottom area. And each of these areas can be placed inside frames, but they do not need to. But first, let us try something a bit more simple. I am using PyCharm, the ultimate version, but you can just as well use PyCharm, the community edition, because we are not using style sheets or HTML. That is the difference between those two versions. You can also use VS Code if you want to, or another editor of your choice. I'm using a virtual environment for this setup right here, and if you're using Windows with WSL, then I would definitely recommend you not to use WSL for the project location, because you want to place your project on your Windows machine, because then you can use the Windows UI. If you run inside WSL, then you will get an ugly UI, and you will also get a less responsive UI, and you will also not get all of the fonts that you have on your Windows system. So even though usually it's a good idea to use your WSL for programming, then when you're dealing with UI and GUI programming, then you should place your project on your Windows machine, and you should also use the Python interpreter that is located on your Windows machine. Another thing, whenever you're dealing with Python, place a requirements.txt file, and here you will place your extra requirements that you need, the extra dependencies that you need for your project to work. This is good practice also so your colleagues or friends that uses your project, they know which dependencies they have to install either in the virtual environment, or maybe if they're using Anaconda, inside the Anaconda environment. In this situation right here, we actually only need Pillow, because Tkinter is a part of the Python 3 distribution already. So we just need the Pillow library dependency. And the reason why we need that is because we need to load some images using Pillow. If we're not about to load images, then of course we could leave out the Pillow dependency right here. But first of all, now let us look at the place example. Place is when we explicitly say that we want to place a widget like 200 pixels from the left side and 200 pixels from the top. Then that is an X value of 200 and a Y value of 200 also. And that's exactly the example I have right here. And as you can see right here, it's also very few lines to actually get a UI application with Tkinter. I'm importing all of these, import star right here. That is because then I can just write something like this, like TK, and then I can call it, I can call it TK function, which is the first function that we need to call. This is where we get the root. This is where we get our window where we're actually placing everything on. Whenever we have a widget, dealing with a widget, we always have a parent. That's the first thing we actually give to the widget. We need to say which parent do we want to place this widget inside. There can only be one parent, but one parent's parent can again have a parent. So there's a hierarchy for all of these widgets, and that is very important to understand. Then I'm importing these pill right here. I don't need that because we're not playing around with images right here, and we actually also don't need the first line, but I like to have the first line if I need some Tkinter. If I need some Tkinter classes, then I can actually then I can call them with the Tk like that. So here I got the root. That is this line right here. Then I'm setting the title to test the place. We can actually add a bit here. Layout manager. So this is to test the place layout manager. Then we create something called a canvas. A canvas is something that you can write on top. That means that you can create some lines, you can create some graphs, you can draw on top of this. So canvas is like it's actually just what it says. It's an area to draw on. So that is a canvas. And in this situation right here, I'm also giving this this extra configuration option right here, which says background, and I'm setting this to yellow. For each widget, there are a lot of configuration options, and I'll show you how to print all of these options in just a couple of minutes. Or else, if you are curious about all of these options and how to use them, then you need to read the documentation per widget types, and there are widgets. All the widget type you would expect are there. Like you have an entry is an input field where you can actually type stuff in. Then we have a label, that is where we can show some text to or an image to the user. Then we have a button. We have radio buttons. We have lists. We have all the expected widgets that you could expect from a good UI framework. This is the canvas. Then we are placing the canvas and we are giving it a width and height also. And then we are placing this at x0 and y0. That means it will start up in the top left corner, and then from there it will actually draw the canvas. Then I'm creating one label right here, and the way I'm creating a label is by using the label. It has a constructor where you are applying. You give it the parent as the first argument. This is the most important. It is the most important argument. Where do we want to place this label? And I want to place it inside the root widget right here. And then I'm setting up some text right here. Hello, this is placed. This is a placed label like this. And then I'm setting the font. The font can be set in multiple ways. One way is to set it with, if we both want to set the family name and also the size, then we give it a tuple like this. But we could actually also just give it one argument like the family, like this. Then it would just be Arial, but then we would have the default size, which is a bit small. So I would like to give it a tuple, and then maybe not 40, but maybe we can give it 30 instead. And then I'm placing this label at x200 and y200 also. Then I'm creating another label, and this other label will be placed with relative x and relative y values. That means that it will actually go 10% out from the left side, and it will go 50% down from the top, and then it will actually place this label right there. And you can see right here the label is being created just like the first label. We give it the parent, which is root, and then we set the text value right here. Other label being placed. And then we set the fonts, and we could set this as font of 35 instead. And then I have this line right here. That is actually very important. Without this, your program would not run. This is what actually will. This is what the code will stop on this line right here, and will wait until we press the X button or until we call a destroy on the window. So now I'll press Ctrl Shift F10, which will run the program that I have in focus, which is right here. And I have a yellow background. That is because I set my background to yellow on the canvas right here. So I have a canvas which is 800 times 600. That means that when I when I resize my window, then you can see that it's only 800 times 600, the canvas. And then we have the first label, which is the hello. This is a placed label. That has a fixed x and y value. It does not matter how I resize my window. It will always have the exact same x and y values. While the other label will actually change the position inside the window, because we said that it should have 10% from the left side, and it needs to have 50% from the top. That's what relative x and y actually means. So so places it's a nice way, and it's a cool way to actually place the widgets. And you can also imagine if you're using a frame where you can have widgets inside this frame, and then you can place your frames wherever you want on the screen. This gives a very flexible setup, and it also it both scales up and down very easily also when your window is being resized. Of course, you can also choose to create an application where the window cannot be resized. So that is place. That is one option. Another option to lay out all of your widgets is to use the pack. The pack is the most easiest layout manager there are, and it's actually not that fancy. Before we go through the code, let me just show you the result right here. We have some widgets that are placed, that are packed horizontally. Those in the bottom are packed horizontally, and then we have some widgets that are packed vertically. Those are the canvas, and the two labels right there. Let us look at the code, how it actually looks, because it is very, very easy to set up a packed application. However, it can be a bit difficult to make it look nice, but it's a very, very good way to actually just start doing something and to start to create something. So if you're impatient and you just want to try out all of the basic stuff, then you could start with the pack. And as you can see right here, I'm creating the canvas again and giving the parent as usual. This time I set the width and the height to a bit smaller, so it does not take up as much space. And then when I then call canvas pack, then I only give one argument, that is to how do I want to pack this, how do I want to stack this widget, and that is I want to stack it up to the top. And the same I do the same with the one label right here. The difference is that I actually add some padding right here. If your application does not look nice to begin with, then first of all add a background image maybe to the roots. That is one option. Another option is also to add some padding to all of your widgets, so you get some spacing between them. It means a lot that there are some space between each widget. It just looks nicer. You can also add some colors, like you can have a light foreground color, and then you can have a dark background color that can also give a more fancy look to your application. But here we have the two labels right here, and then we have the 3 entry points. An entry point is something, it's like an input box where you can type in stuff, and then of course you can use that value in your program later on. And you can, if you want to listen for changes, then you can bind to events with the root.bind, and then you can bind for key pressed or key up. You can also bind for configuration, configure. Then you will actually get an event every time the window is being changed. But I will show you this in just a while. Let us just run this program once again so we can see this is packed. So this is packed. We are stacking them horizontally, the entry points in the bottom right here, and vertically with the other widgets right there. Now let us look at the grid example that I've created, and I would definitely recommend you to kind of use the same approach, but maybe even more so to use the object-oriented approach, where you create a class and then you place your definitions, and you place all of your widgets as member variables, especially the widgets, at least the widgets that you want to change when your program runs. At least create some member variables out of those inside your class, and then the more classes the better actually. And I've only used one class. I could definitely have used many more classes. I could have created one class per area on the screen, per frame, so to say. And then I could have also placed out my logic when when the buttons are pressed. I could place that in other files if I want to also. But I just have one class here. Then another thing I would recommend when you have a Python program, that is to add those 2 lines right here. That is where you check that this is the main program. If it's not the main program, then nothing will happen. That is what this says right here. If this is the main program, then you will create a new instance of my application, which is the class, and then you will call the run application function. The reason why this is important is if you have another, if your colleague suddenly by mistake import this file right here, then you don't want suddenly a UI to pop up and to run and to be called. You only want it if this is the main program, if it was on purpose that this program was called. That is why we need these 2 lines right here. Now let us look at our class. First of all, we have a class, then we have some constants. You can see it's constants because it's in uppercase. And you should never change a variable because it is actually just a variable. When it's in uppercase, then another developer has told you that this is a constant. You should not change this, even though that you actually can technically change it. So I'm setting some paddings, I've set some font phase, I've created some fonts for my buttons and for my labels, so they have the same look and feel. Then I have a current image. This is the index of the current image that I am at right now. And then I have the images to show, which will go down in the images folder. And then it will actually list all of the images. So this will just contain a list of these file names right here, without the directory prefix, just so you know. So you have to, when you're loading the image, you have to add the directory prefix yourself. Then we have this photo image right here. That is what we are going to change every time we press the button. Then we want to set this photo image, and then we want to place the photo image inside the logo label right there. And then we have a label current picture. This is the label that says which image are we actually looking at right now. And then we have a frame image right now. Right there, that we did not have to actually set that as a member variable if you didn't want to, but it's actually good practice to have all of your widgets as member variables or as properties, because then you can access them if you suddenly want to inside your program. Let us press Ctrl Shift F10 just so we remember what kind of program it was that we actually had. So we have this photo app right here where I can press next, and then the images will swap whenever I press these buttons right here. And we have 3 areas. We have a header, we have a middle, which is my image, and then we have a bottom, which is actually where we control which image we want to look at. The bottom is a frame. The middle is actually also a frame. It did not have to be a frame because there's only one label inside it, which has an image. So it's in this situation it's a bit overkill to have a frame in the middle, but it doesn't do anything. It's okay that we have a frame right there, especially if you want to add some more metadata maybe about the image. We want to create some metadata in either the left or the right side, where we add some size and date and stuff like that. Then it's good to have the frame. That was what I was thinking when I created this as a frame right here. The top is not a frame. That is just a label with some styling on it. So let us continue looking at the program. We have a function. I will return to the function a bit later. This is a function that are being called every time we press the buttons in the bottom of the screen. Then we have a function that is being called every time we resize the application. That is just to show you an example of how to listen for events, and we are listening for configure changes. And this is the program execution itself. So this is what we actually were dealing with just before. So first of all, we create the root, we create a window, we set the title, and now I'm binding the configure to this function right here. So that means every time we get a configure event, that means that every time the window will be resized, then this function right here will be called, and we just print out the resized event. We have this E right here, which is actually the event. We could name this event instead, and then we are printing out the event, and that is also what we can see in the bottom right here. We have a width and a height. And why is that interesting? It is interesting if we want to resize the image that we saw in the middle. If we want to resize that so it always takes up all of the space, then we want to know how big is the window actually. We can bind to all of the other events also. There are key pressed, there are key up. We can mouse movement, mouse click events, we can look inside the documentation and see which events that we can actually look for right here. And all of the events that you would expect are actually it is possible to bind to those events right there, and then you can have, of course, the different functions for each use case, for each event type. And usually you always get this event object with you. Sometimes it's then which key has been pressed. That's what you get in this E instead. Then we have the header label that we are creating right here, and we are, again, as usual, we always set the parent first. And then I'm setting a background color right here. This is the hex value. If you don't, you can also write some clear text like blue or black or white or something like that. But if you don't know how to get the hex value, then you could just Google color picker, and then Google will actually give you a small utility where you can choose a color from a palette, and then you will get this hex value that you can copy and paste to your Python program right here. Then I'm setting the font right there, and then then I'm calling grid. So this is a very important function, because when I call grid, if I didn't call grid, then it would not be placed on the root. It would not be placed in the window. And what I do, it takes two arguments. One, which column do we want to add, place this widget in, and which row. And it can be a good idea to make a drawing of your application on how you intend it to look like when it's done, and then make some lines down through to the drawing, and then imagine how many columns do you want in your application. Maybe you want 3. It's very normal to have 3 columns, and maybe also 3 rows. Then you will have something in the top, something in the middle, and something in the bottom. And then maybe you will have it something to the left, something in the middle again, and then something to the right. That would be like 3 times 3. But you don't have to decide when you start the program. You can, but it's because this just takes indexes. So that means that if you have another widget that has a column of 1, then the layout manager will know that then you actually have 2 columns all in all. And if you have not given those a weight, something called a weight, then they will just take up the space that they have by default. If you have given these columns a weight, then they will take up the relative value in space that they actually can. I'll show you this when we come a bit further down. Then we have this frame image. This is the middle part. So here we have the frame, and again I set a background color. The reason why I'm so happy for these background colors is that I can see when they start and when they end those frames, or else it's a bit difficult and I have to guess where's my frame right now, especially when you're dealing with the grid layout manager. I would say to begin with, you definitely need to set on some background colors, or else you cannot see what is actually going on, and it will take you much longer to figure out and to create something that looks nice. Then I'm setting photo image, and I'm just setting it to one image to begin with, mountain 1. And as soon as we start pressing the buttons, of course, that image will then be replaced. And then when I have this label right here, where I am placing it inside. I'm placing it inside the frame image. Again, look, now it's another parent. I'm placing it inside the frame image. And then I say that it should have an image, and that should be this photo image right here. And this is where we need the pillow library. So we're using the pillow library to load this image right here, and to convert it into the right format, so it matches the TK widget named label. And here we call grid again now, but this is inside the frame. So we have a lot of different grids. We have grids inside each frame. We have a grid. We have a main grid inside, outside on the root. So it depends on which parent we have. We can actually have a grid per parent. That is how it works, and that's also why it's so strong with the grid, the grid layout manager. And then I set something right here called column configure. This is why we set a weight. That means that we are trying to take up, we give this the first column inside the frame, we give that a weight of 1. That means it will try to take up as much space as it can. X-wise, because this is the column, and then also Y-wise, because here we set the weight also to 1 right here. And if you have multiple widgets inside it, then you can actually have different weights, and then it will just take the relative the space. And you can choose these number yourself. It just needs to be a whole number. It's an integer, so you can type in 100 and 200, and then you would have one widget that would take up one part every time the other widget would take up two parts, even though you write 100 and 200. It's a relative number that you type in right there. Then you have the then we call grid on the frame image right here. So that means that it will now be set on row 1 on the main grid out on the root. And then I use something called sticky. There's something called sticky. This means where should it stick to. And I've chosen north, south, east, and west. That means it will try to stick to all the sides. And again, this means that it will try to take the space if we are adding a weight later on. Then I add some padding. If your program looks bad and you don't have any padding, add some padding. It will help right away. Then we have the next previous part. That is the bottom part, where we are creating a frame, as we just read before. We are placing the parent as root. The background is that color right there, which let us just see which color was that. That is the bottom. That is yellow. That was actually the yellow color right there. And I'll close it again. And then I create the previous button, and I put that in the frame right there, the parent right there. That is the frame underscore next underscore previous. So that is the parent, and then I place it inside the parent with the grid function again. And this time I say sticky west. That means that it will actually stick to the left side right there. Again, I add some padding, both x and y's. Then I have the label. That is the current. That is this text that we can see in the bottom right here. That is the current picture, :1. That is that text right there. Picture 1, picture 2, and you can see there the reason why the text is now a little bit different is because it's being set programmatically. So then we have button next, which is set right there, and it has a column of 2. And the label had a column of 1. That is because of the position inside the program. First we had the previous, that was column 0. Then we have the label, that's column 1. And then we had the next button, which is column 2. So that is the position inside this frame right here. And that's actually it. Then we have we are placing the bottom frame. We're placing that as row 2 in the main grid that we have right there. Another thing, then I'm adding some weight. I say the column 0 and row 0 should have weight 1. That means it will try to take up the space if it can. And then we have the main loop that we also saw before. So this is our program. There's a little bit more code, but you can see we just built it up in portions, and we could also have created different functions for these parts right here. We could have created different classes for these parts right here if we want to hide the code away, so we can focus on the parts that we actually want to focus on every time. So that is our program. Press next. Every time I resize, then in the bottom I can see I get my events, and then I get the printout. Let me just check right here. So now I got some events again. Just scroll all the way down the bottom. Right there, and then we can see the output again, once again here. Yeah, okay, let me just give you some small tips and tricks. One is how to choose the font, how to know which fonts are available in your system. I've created this small program right here where I can print out all of the fonts. I'll press Ctrl+Shift+F10 after giving it the focus. I have this button right here, list families, and it lists all the font families right now available. And of course I can choose another one, stencil, right here. And the way that it does that is I have a very, very small program right here. I have a font face, a constant right there, I have a size right there, and then I have a button. I have two buttons. One button right there, and you can see there's some padding, so that's why we get the spacing in between them. And when the command equals to list fonts, that means that when we press the button, this button right here that says list families, then we will call this function up here. And what it does, it actually goes through, it takes fonts families, and the font is from Tkinter. From Tkinter, where we take that, and then we actually just print out all of the families. So it's quite easy to get all of the fonts. Now, just for fun, I'll just replace the Møller with this right here, and we will rerun the program. And now you can see now we have the stencil font instead right there. And then there's another button called configuration keys. If you want to know which keys are available for you to play with, which configuration that you can use, then you can just press, then you can get them all out. You see there's something called text, pad X, image, command. And what have we given this function right here? We give it a button as an argument, and then we go through the button configure keys, and that is actually a set that we go through right here, because button configure, that is the dictionary. That is the dictionary we have right there, and then we just print out each key. And if we go down to see how it's implemented, here we have the config keys right here, and we have the command right here. Because we give it arguments, then we need the lambda colon in front. That is because it takes an argument. That is the easiest way to actually use arguments and the command at the same time. Then we have list underscore config, and then we give the button config keys as an argument right there. That's a parameter. And you can see that is the button that we have created right there. And we're actually also using grid for this, for laying out these widgets right here. I hope you liked this video. If you did, then please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because we have a lot of cool stuff coming up. Bye.